and all that kind of stuff is cowboy up. Sometimes in life, we just have to cowboy up. Sometimes we just have to discipline ourselves to say, no matter what lies behind me, I'm going to press forward to what lies ahead. Amen? The second thing I want to talk to you about this morning is unresolved anger. In John chapter 11 lies one of my favorite stories in all the Bible because it has so much meat. It's so packed full of stuff. And it's a story that we refer to of Lazarus being raised from the dead. Now let me set this up for you. Lazarus is sick. And Martha and Mary, they send word to Jesus. They say, Jesus, Lazarus is sick. You need to hurry up and come. And you need to heal him before he dies. And in verse 5, this is what it said. So although Jesus loved Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, he stayed where he was for the next 2 days. And I mean, that gets me sometimes because I'm like, God, if you really love Lazarus, why didn't you go? God, if you really love me, why don't you step into my situation now before things get worse? See, most people sustain their pain because they don't address the cause of their pain. So many times the pain in our life comes from anger. We get mad at somebody. It's not necessarily the situation that we went through, it's the person that put us in that situation. And I mean, we all have that person that when you hear their name, you know, your face starts getting flushed, you know, your hands will start clenching in a fist, and all you can say is, it is a good thing I'm not God. I would strike that person. Now, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. Most people sustain their pain because they don't address the cause of their pain. And sometimes it's not another person. Sometimes it's God. Sometimes we get angry at God. We get angry at God for not showing up in our life, in our situation, in the midst of our pain when we want Him to. And what do? We come down here, and we come to the altar, and we pray, and during worship, we clap our hands, and when MC1 gets up there, we're like, what, you know, I mean, we play all the motions, and we do all the things, and we're breaking inside, and we're doing the motions for the church, for the benefit of how people look. I don't want people to talk to me right now, so I'm just going to pretend like everything's okay. And we worship God with our hands, but we don't worship God with our hearts. We don't worship Him with truth because we're mad. Now look at what it says here in John chapter 11 and verse 20. It says, when Martha got word that Jesus was coming, she went to meet Him. But Mary stayed in the house. You know why Mary stayed in the house? Because she was mad. She was mad at Jesus because Lazarus had died. Jesus didn't show up. Guys, there's two types of women. They're the ones that when they get mad, they don't talk to you. And they're the one that when they get mad, you don't want them to talk to you, okay? Mary was the first type. When she was mad, she did not want to talk to Jesus. She did not want to talk to Him. In verse 32, it says, therefore, when Mary came where Jesus was, she saw Him and fell at His feet, saying to Him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. If you had been here, my brother would not have died. She was mad. She was upset. She had a plan of how Jesus needed to work in her situation, and Jesus didn't work that way. And church, that's where we get. God, I know you're the creator of the universe. I know you've got it all worked out, but let me give you 27 small little adjustments, not to change your plan for my life, but just to improve it. Don't let me go here. Don't let me go here. Let's do this instead. And you're almighty. I'm going to live according to your will as long as you conform your will according to my ways. If you want the pain to go away, if you don't want the pain to remain, you got to deal with the anger. I'll tell you right now, sometimes you're just not going to understand the way God works. It's not up to us to understand the way God works. It's up to us to trust. When I get in an airplane and I fly, I don't know what all those buttons do. I don't know what all those contraptions do. I don't know what the red blinking light means. I'm sure it's not good, but I don't know what it means. But what I do know is that I have trust and I have faith in the man that's sitting behind that wheel. In my life, I don't understand what all the blinking lights mean in my life. I don't understand what all the pain, what all the trials mean, but I know who's got control of my life. There was a time a few years ago in my life when, man, it just seemed like in about the span of 6 weeks, so many things went wrong in my life. I mean, just out of nowhere, it was boom, 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 boom. And when I thought it couldn't get any worse, my sister, she died in a car wreck. 34 years old, mother of 3. We drove out to see her, and I mean, the weather was so bad. It was a very it was just a very trying situation. And I remember when they were getting ready to just kind of pull the plug and let her go, they gave us all a chance to go into the room there and kind of do our thing. And I'm sitting there, and I just remember holding her hand, and I just started crying. And I mean, this was like the last straw for me, because I've just been through so much. And then I just stopped, and I just prayed, and I said, God, I don't get it. I don't understand it, and frankly, I don't like it. But I'm still going to trust you. And I don't say that to brag on myself. I don't say that to try to build myself up. I say it because I realized in that time that there was somebody stronger than me, there was somebody better than me, there was somebody in more control of me. And when I didn't know what to do, when I didn't know what was going on, I knew who was in control. And that's all I could rely on. At some point in our life, that's where we have to get. At some point in the middle, your praise and your some people say fake it till you make it. I don't say fake it till you make it. We come down here and we pretend and we say, God, everything's okay, everything's good. Like God doesn't see that we're breaking. God doesn't see that we're just dying inside. Now, if we go on a little bit later in John 11, in verse 33, the third thing I want to talk about today is underestimating God. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit. Some translations say angry. He was angry and was troubled, and said, Where have you laid him? They said to him, Come and see. Verse 35, Jesus wept. So the Jews were saying, See how he loved him. But some of them said, Could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind have kept this man also from dying? So Jesus, again, being deeply moved within, came to the tomb. Now it was a cave, and the stone was lying against it. Jesus said, Remove the stone. Now what we have to understand is, if you remember when we started that, Lazarus was about to die. By the time Jesus got there, Lazarus had been dead 4 days. Now this was very, very important, because that culture in that time, what they believed the spirit of a person hung around for 3 days. They hung around the body for 3 days. So at the point of 4 days, they believed nothing could be done. Jesus knew. That's why he waited 4 days. If you read this passage is not about Lazarus being raised from the dead. That's not the point. That's not the miracle. What Jesus was trying to do is get the people to believe. As you read later on in that passage, when he prays, he says, I pray not that you can hear me. He said, I know that you hear me, but I pray that they may believe. That's what the passage is about. Jesus showed up in his timing. So many of us in our situation, maybe the bank comes and takes your house. Maybe the doctor has already given you a bad report. Whatever it is, we roll the stone in front of the tomb of our situation before Jesus has ever shown up. Jesus was angry. If you look, Jesus hadn't even got to the tomb. Jesus wasn't mad. He was mad twice and cried once before he even saw where they laid Lazarus. He wasn't crying and he wasn't upset because Lazarus was dead. He was upset and he was crying because those people who had saw him feed 5,000, who have seen him open the eyes of the blind, they talked about it. Seen all these miracles. They're right there with them and they don't recognize. They don't get it. Jesus didn't move according to what their mind could comprehend, so they thought it was over. They thought it was too late. In our situations, I think the biggest reason for sustained pain, I think the biggest reason why we can't get over situations is because we're looking for the wrong answer. God, if you move like this, if you fix my husband, if you fix my kids, maybe God isn't fixing your husband and your kids because he's trying to fix you. The reason for sustained pain, and I think this is the biggest reason, is that we underestimate God. It goes back to that, God, let me just give you a couple tips on how you need to work my life. God, let me just, this is what I want you to do. I want you to do this, and then everything's going to be fine and I'll change. God, I'll start tithing, I'll start giving whenever you start giving me a better job. God, I'm going to support my family and be the husband or the mother and the dad that I need to be, but I'm going to hold out for a management position. Maybe God's not trying to get you to hold out for a management position because he has something that he's trying to teach you, or he has a situation he wants to use you in at the position that's open right now. But what happens is when God doesn't give us that management position because we're looking for the wrong answer, then we start getting mad. We start getting angry, and we start underestimating God. And I'm closing with this, but let's look back at Job. Job later understood that no matter what you feel or what happens, God does exist, and he deeply, deeply loves you. No matter how awful things become, no matter what happens, we can never, never, never be separated from God's love. The Bible tells us that it's in Jesus that all things are held together. Regardless if the world is falling apart around you, when you have a relationship with Jesus, that's what holds us together. You know, when you come and get saved, it's not that you go through any less problems. Sometimes, to be honest, you're going to go through more issues. You're going to go through more trials. You're going to go through more valleys that you have to walk through. The difference is this time you have somebody who's walking through them with you. No matter how awful things become, we can never be separated from God's love. Even in the middle of all your heartbreak, you can tell God, I'm going to hold on and wait for you to show me your kindness and your love, no matter what happens. I want you to be able to say, church, what the psalmist said in Psalms 27:14. Wait for the Lord's help. Be strong and brave, and wait for the Lord's help. Some translations actually say, and I'm going to say it again, wait for the Lord's help. You will come out of all the pain and be a much stronger person. You will say what Job said. But God knows the way that I take, and when he tested me, I will come out like gold. Church, you can't choose whether or not you're going to go through pain today. You can't choose whether or not you're going to go through trials or whether you're going to go through situations, but you can choose whether or not you're going to come out like gold. Life is 10% what you go through and 90% how you handle what you go through. I tell the kids on Wednesday nights, I say, God is less interested in the situation that you find yourself in and more interested in how you're handling the situation you find yourself in. It is said that it is in the process of being worshiped that God communicates his presence to men. Psalms chapter 30 verse 11 says, you have turned my mourning into joyful dancing. You have taken away my clothes of mourning and clothed me with joy, that I might sing praises to you and not be silent. O Lord my God, I will give you thanks forever. So many times in life, what happens is that when we start going through pain, we start sulking up and we start closing ourselves in and not dealing with it. But this is what David said. You have turned my mourning into dancing, and I will not be silent.